to do with some kind of synergy in this stuff that she and I have, and the government wants to study. It had to do with what you said, non-locality. The Project Pegasus was real for some people in the deep state or in the psyops, deep blacks, doing stuff. We weren't bending spoons or anything, but, some of it's white propaganda. But this is deep stuff you can do with your mind. And Pegasus was about, I would say, travelers or time travel. And there was a scientific part of it with the universities. And the other part was the mind with some of the people that took it. Russell Targ, I think, Puthoff. Anyway, Janet and I were the light part of that, the end result in Hawaii. So I'm not sure how you fit in with this, but I know you do, Ira. But I don't know what part, unless you're going to write it up or prove that it exists. I don't know your part. Janet, you know what I'm saying, right? We don't even know our part.
Let me say something, and then I'll pass the talking stick to Ira.
To Ira.
Let me say a couple things. First of all, I wanted, since we're asking questions of all of us, yesterday I was getting ready to go out, and I was brushing my teeth or brushing my hair or something, I can't remember which, but suddenly something picked up my skirt. I had a nightgown on, and they pulled it up and back, so if somebody was behind me, they would have seen my butt, and then they dropped it. There was nobody in the house.
It wasn't me. I'm in Philadelphia.
Okay. But I had been talking about two of my cousins, both male, one first cousin, one second cousin, that had died in the last month. And so I'm not leading the witness here. I'm just giving you the background. I want to know what you guys think that was. Both of you. Both answer. What do you think?
Let Ira, because he's been quiet.
Ira, what was going on there? What was going on? I was trying to think of some logical explanation for that. Besides, where I go is ghosts all the time, But I go, well, maybe there's some other thing that could happen that would make my dress go up in the middle of the house with no one else in it.
Well, unless you were standing on. Marilyn Monroe style.
No.
Great. Were these relatives playful? The ones that recently passed away. I mean, did you have that type of playful relationship with them?
No, and I'll tell you, this family. This is my mother's sister's children and her grandchildren. And every time I hear of their passing, something weird happens. And so that, I totally believe in ghosts. I see ghosts, but I didn't know if there's, and I go there with ghosts all the time. And so anyway, I thought it was a ghost, and I thought it was one of the two. And they know that I can see them because I'm part of this secret space program. I am a psychic and telepathic, and that's why they selected me for Project Stargate. But then, like TJ's saying, we can't prove anything. And so, anyway, I'm just going, that's ghost. So that's one thing. We don't have to stick with that. But I just wanted to share that weird shit happens all the time, especially when this family dies. Like the other time, I have a cowbell out in the porch. And my sister says, oh, Cousin Rosemary died. So I go in to tell my husband, and he was in the bathroom, so I kind of sat on the floor outside of the bathroom. And I said, oh, I'm very sad. My cousin Rosemary died. And then the cowbell, and you have to grab this thing and go ding, right, with your hand. It doesn't just move. It goes ding. And I go, wow, Rosemary, if that's you, ring the bell twice. And so then I set up a series of a couple questions. And every time I asked a question, it would ding once or twice. And I said, okay, well, thank you, goodbye. And then there was no more dings. So I think I'm having communication with the spirit world. Now, some people set up those arrays where they have the sound array or the video array, and you can catch their images or hear their words. So anyway, that's way off topic, but and
no,
energy.
It's not really
People
off
like
topic.
to talk
I mean,
about
it's about look in my biologic form right now. I am a form of complex energy that's collapsed and put in a certain structure to operate. Yet, I firmly believe that when we leave this world, the rules of conservation of energy and so forth apply. That information that you've generated throughout a lifetime doesn't disappear. I mean, it exists, just like the starlight exists in the sky of stars that burned out thousands of years ago. That's just electromagnetic information. So the ability of two forms of information to interact, to vibrate, to resonate, is a pretty common aspect of science. I had my mother passed away a few years ago, and I had many sort of after death contact type events in the ensuing years, where in the middle of the night, TV would miraculously turn on to a show that she used to love to watch, but the remote control, it wasn't I was rolling on the remote control, that was across the room. You would smell a fragrance that she used to wear wafting around the home, even though we didn't have it in the home. A lot of strange things like that would happen, and it makes, once again, I want to try to connect everything back to the biological at some point, because I believe there are important lessons here in terms of deeper understanding of how all this stuff works, not just in regenerative medicine, but to a deeper understanding of the mind and consciousness and so forth. But once again, the general ability to tap into information, whether that is my mind tapping into that information, or whether that's the ability of some other organism that doesn't have a brain tapping into electromagnetic information, it's all, let's just say, the same basket of stuff. And if I have a dream that I'm a jellyfish floating around in an ocean on Jupiter, I think maybe there's more to that than just creating that idea. I clearly think that there is the information of all of those events in the universe. And yeah, I don't believe that dreams are just us making these things up. So sorry to get a little off topic there, but I did want to.
No, that's great.
I did want to mention that.
Says, yeah, go ahead.
No, I did want to mention that these are not, in my world, these are not weird things. These are not weird phenomena. I think the whole area of after-death communication, what happens to us, what happens to the mind, what happens to the soul, these themes can, with the help of the cutting edge of biology, quantum biology, some of these new fields of cognitive studies, they all fit together. And they begin to make much more sense than they ever have. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, again, you asked me my opinion. I want to tell you that
go ahead. Your turn. Sure.
In the paranormal world that you and I exist in, and you much more with the woo-woo and the secret space program than I am, because you're more of a believer. But in my world, we have to accept what's taught in the secret, because of the people, some of my greatest teachers were involved in that program, the girl that did that, but including Dirk Vanderplug that was in Canada, But the thing is to ask the genie that's out of the bottle out there that we call whatever, but the genie of the bottle, you were supposed to have 3 wishes. Actually, it was more than that, but we went with 3. But they say that you have to ask and then believe and then receive. It's like ABCs, but it's ABR. But in my world, of entrepreneurship, we say you have to ask, believe, and achieve. So it's different. But when it comes to, like, my daughter watching television, there's one really good psychic, and I think they had her at a MUFON event once, or a UFO event. She read, and she's on television, and my daughter watches her, and we record it, and she can tell you, and works with a detective, what happened, and her husband will go in and take down all the pictures and things like that, not to lead her on, like you said, lead the witness. And she still gets a lot correct about the land and the people that died and all that. So what we've done, and from Coffee, one of the guys, I forget, he's one of the old ones, like James Van Prague, but I think it's James Coffee. But anyway, Coffee, and I think he's worked with alien hunters before, yeah. But they use a psychic, and what we say is it's either you doing it, and they're very famous for figuring it out. Are you doing it like static electricity? Are you doing it, or is something an outside force? And they usually do believe in entities and people that have died, at the energy, and a lot of it's abruptly thrown out of them, or some people don't know they've passed. So we're developing, I don't know if you'd say proper nomenclature or taxonomy, or just a general consensus in entertainment, at least the movies and television shows and documentaries, because these are called reality shows now, to accept that is real. And a lot of people will argue with that, just like ghosts and the paranormal and haunted houses and haunted mansions. But, normally a reader would tell you, well, if you're thinking about that, the thought was so strong that you brought some form of entity of that energy back to you, right? If you don't think you personally caused it, some energy around you, because it can be either or. Now, I don't know why that is, but they'll always look at the person first, at least in my business of investigation and paranormal investigations. You look at what, you rule out everything, and whatever the simplest form is, usually the simplest thought that, now I don't know, maybe it may be, Ira, you tell me how you do it. You understand, in science you have to prove it to your peers, or you have to do it and explain that to the people. You have to experiment so many times, and other people have to be able to do it, right? Ira, what is that called?
It's all about the peer review process and the ability of a group of your peers, and hopefully they're not competitors or have other conflicts, but a group of your peers to reproducibly replicate what you've done in your experience, in your lab experience.
So is that supposed to make it scientific? According to forensics?
You're getting into a tricky area now, because there are gold standards, of which peer review in science is, of course, one of them. However, the flip side of it is that, there was a study done a couple of years ago that in my industry alone, every year there's something like $30 billion of irreproducible peer-reviewed literature. And that doesn't take into account the non-reproducible clinical work. I'm just talking about the preclinical animal stuff in drug development. $30 billion worth. So peer review is the standard, the gold standard, but it talked to a lot of people. It has a lot of drawbacks. So I don't think there's a perfect system yet, but it is, let's say, one of the hoops you have to go through.
Well, you don't do trying to get government funding like a lot of the nonprofits are, educational schools, right? So
we did a lot of that in my previous company, and we had a whole team dedicated to it, and they were good at that. We just don't have that group today. It's applying for government grants specifically on the scientific front is, it's a very bureaucratic system. It takes a long time, and things move a lot faster when you work with private investors and can spend your money the way you want to spend your money.
And you've been able to do it with private investors. Would they allow you to educate people at like this MUFON thing coming up in California in July? Or I mean, how would